National Radio Time, it's now 8 minutes past 9, 8 after 9, and I said I was going to have a guest in here this morning, and I do have a guest in here this morning, Captain Brian Souter. Good morning, Brian.
Good morning, Lloyd.
How are you?
I'm very well.
Did you fly in this morning?
By car.
Fair enough. I thought it might be nice to have a talk to an airline pilot, and I met you a few weeks ago, but Brian also went to Waitaki Boys High School, where I went to, so it's interesting to find out just what's happened to him since then. But I've never really had a chance to talk to an international airline pilot before, and I'm sure there are lots of interesting things that lots of travellers and non-travellers would like to know about the business. You've handed me a couple of logbooks here. You've got 6 of them, you tell me. And
Yes.
These are all full of information and things. When did you start flying?
In 1947 as a 10-year-old, just at the local aero club as a passenger. In those days, at Otago Aero Club, if you signed up as an associate member, you're entitled to 1 free flight a year for about 10 minutes. And as a small boy, I used to go and once a year have my free flight as part of my associate membership.
Did you wangle any others, or did you always only get 1 a year?
Of course.
I see. And from then on, I mean, what was it that made you go there in the first place?
I've always been interested in aviation, virtually as far back as I can remember. Older family members tell tales of me riding my trike over to the airport at Taieri, the tail end of World War II. In fact, there was quite a search party out looking for me, and they eventually found me and my trike amongst the tiger moths and all the airmen out at Taieri Airport at the tail end of World War II.
And all the way from there on, you never veered from the path of wanting to be a pilot?
No, not really.
Do you think in those days, it's fascinating looking through here back to 1955 and these entries here, do you think in those days it was, there were more prospects for someone wanting to be a commercial pilot than there are today?
Yes and no, because it's the old law of supply and demand. Sometimes there's a lot of vacancies, flying jobs are readily available. Other times nothing moves for a number of years, because it does tend to be tied up with a nation's economy, whether there's much activity or it's stagnant.
So what sort of training, I mean, did you find that you've actually trained all your life as you fly?
Oh, yes. There's a variety of stepping stones through to the job. Start off initially. Well, in my case, I started off with Aero Club flying, got my private pilot's license, and then you go on and get your commercial pilot's license. Your instrument rating, perhaps I should explain what that is. That's learning to fly just using instruments alone rather than looking out the window to keep right side up, so to speak. The other avenue, of course, is which a number of people have done, is they've joined the military. And I was on the for compulsory military training anyway. It was the tail end of the courses to actually fly tiger moths, and so I had the doubtful honour of being one of the last pilots to fly Her Majesty's tiger moths officially.
Gee. And are they do you like them? Are they neat to fly?
Yes.
What's the best plane? What's the plane you like flying most?
It was a little Italian aircraft that was imported into New Zealand by one of my old co-pilots, and it was a Sia Machetti SF-260. It's used a lot by various air forces around the world for basic and advanced training. And that has got to be one of the most delightful aeroplanes I've ever flown.
It's not big enough to be a passenger plane?
Oh, no, it's a 3-seater military trainer, basically, or a civilian touring aircraft.
What did you like about it so much? I mean, I presume it's a bit like a pianist sitting down and playing a piano and thinking, oh, I like this one, as opposed to, I like that one, not so much.
It is a little like that, because in the piano, it's a combination of the feel of the keys, the sound that comes out of it, the resonance, the timbre, the tone, things like that. And with the aeroplane, it's the response you get from the controls, how the controls feel in your hands and your feet, the visibility out of the aeroplane, the response you get for particular control inputs. And little Sia Machetti, that was a real honey.
And did you fly that in a commercial situation, or was it just a private?
It was just purely in a private capacity. I got involved in that and doing the actual importation of the aircraft for him, and in the consequence for that, I was able to fly it a few times, and it was one of life's pleasures, shall we say.
Have you always flown commercially? I mean, from a passenger point of view, or have you flown commercially from sort of cargo or moving things about as well?
Right. Let's go back. I got my wings in the Royal New Zealand Air Force on flying Harvards and Vampires. Then I had my 21st birthday in what was called those days NAC. And as I was a DC-3 co-pilot, and I'm afraid I'm sufficiently long in the tooth to say that in those days we didn't even have hostesses on the aeroplane. I was the hostess.
Were you?
Mm.
So you were a co-pilot?
Yes.
And you walked up and down. Well, did anyone get any drinks or anything like that?
No.
Nothing like that?
Not even a barley sugar. And I think I can still remember was standing at the back of the aircraft at the entry door, and remember the seating plan for a DC-3, because I'd say 3 up on the window seat on the right, madam. And it's quite interesting because in those days it was such a big event to go flying. The women folk went out and bought new hats.
Oh, is that right?
It was sort of on a par with a day at Ascot.
And that was at the time, I suppose, when seaplanes were flying to Australia.
Yes.
Teal.
Teal had the Solents flying across the Tasman, and that was certainly a big event. I think that would probably warrant a complete new clothing outfit going on an international flight.
When you have a co-pilot and a pilot, and I presume that's all you had on a DC-3, how much of the duties were split? Could you get by, for instance, with just a pilot on a DC-3? Can you fly a whole thing with just a pilot?
Yes. The top dressing DC-3s, they all operated only with one pilot. To make life simpler for the single pilot and top dressing DC-3, they modified the position of the undercarriage handle and some of the hydraulic controls, because they would normally be operated by the co-pilot, and you've got to bend down and you wouldn't be able to see out the window, watch out the window at the same time as you operated or retracted the landing gear on the DC-3. So for single pilot operation on a DC-3 top dresser, they modified them. We did in the airline flying. You could fly the DC-3 quite comfortably by yourself, providing you didn't have any problems.
Regulations, I presume, would stop you doing that for passenger carriers.
Yes, yes.
You'd have to have 2 people.
It's a requirement to have a 2-pilot crew once you get above 19 passenger seats.
So how did you split up what you do in a DC-3? Or in any plane? I mean, is it sort of fairly basic what the duties of the pilot are as compared to the co-pilot?
Normal airline flying, you would see virtually leg about. The co-pilot would fly one leg, the captain would fly the other. If he was a smart captain, he would choose which leg he was going to fly.
It's a bit like putting up the toss for cricket.
No, there's no.
No?
You don't toss for it. The captain picks the nice easy one, or if it's a real tough one, he would make sure he was the one doing it. Once again, it would depend on the level of experience of the co-pilot, because there's some very clever co-pilots around, and they can handle things quite nicely.
What would make it tough or easy?
Weather.
Oh, I see.
Weather, or you're carrying, for argument's sake, you might have had, I was going to say an in-flight emergency, is perhaps the wrong term. You've had some malfunctions type of thing which would increase the cockpit workload, and in which case the captain might choose to do the flying or something like that. But basically, in an emergency situation or malfunctions, your employer pays a premium to the captain, and he's supposed to be the most experienced fellow, and they expect him to do the landing type of thing rather than the co-pilot.
Right.
But everything's going fine and it's normal day-to-day flying, then we just swap leg about.
So then you would want to get onto another plane or further through. Is it just ours that does that, or do you have to do a whole lot more training to get onto... What would come next after DC-3?
In my case, a friendship, and that was a number of weeks in ground school. We didn't have simulators in those days, so we did all our conversion flying on the aircraft. I did mine out at Paraparam with Captain Meehan, because I was still a co-pilot at that stage. And we went out there and did various air exercises and single engine exercises, general handling, steep turns, things like that. You expand the training to the limitations of the aeroplane rather than what you do with passengers on board. Because one of the problems that you have, and I think you go back in history a little bit, the pilots were never ever worried. There was no problem with the aeroplane and things like that. They were quite used to the situation. That was in the days of the Heron, coming in and out of the old Rongotai and dropping like a lift over the end of Moa Point. It scared the hell out of the passengers. But really, there was no problem. But they like things in a fairly sedate manner. There was no safety problems involved or anything like that. But because it was fear of the unknown, as far as the passengers are concerned, and probably a classic example of that was I was passengering on a friendship one day, and we were flying through ice, and we had quite a lot of ice on board, and the propeller de-icing equipment, which is little electric heaters on the propeller blades, heat up, and the ice flies off in fairly large lumps sometimes and hits the side of the fuselage, and you're flying along as though somebody's hurling bricks at you. And the captain came on the air and said, you may hear those of you sitting up the front of the cabin may hear the banging and crashing of going on. He said, it's nothing to worry about, it's just ice flying off the propellers. And you could see everybody visibly relax, and they turned around to the people behind. The captain said it was ice off the propellers. And this rumour sort of went from the front of the aeroplane to the back, and all the apprehension just evaporated out of the cabin. So it was something I learnt, and whenever I could hear ice coming off the propellers, I always made a point of remarking to the passengers that that's what it was, because a lot of the fear of flying is fear of the unknown, nothing more, nothing less.
I guess that's true, although to think that you're in a condition where ice might be forming on anything that's moving around out there that's holding you up could be a little bit alarming anyway, I would have thought. But if they relax, then that's obviously the way human nature works, I suppose.
Oh, sorry.
What were we going to say? Okay, so you go through to... did you ever fly the 4-engine Viscounts?
No.
Not.
No, I went straight from the... as co-pilot on Friendships, and I was one of the first co-pilots on the 737. And I had the privilege, yes, it's got to have been a privilege, I had as my instructor the Chief Standards Captain from Boeing. And he used to sit up the front of the aeroplane in the left-hand seat with a monstrous cigar, which he never lit, but he just kept on chewing it and rolling it round and round in his mouth. And he would say, you're allowed, plus give you a particular task to fly, and he would say you're allowed 140 knots plus or minus 1 knot for sloppy flying. He was a tough taskmaster.
So when you learnt on 737s, did they have simulators then?
No.
Still not?
Our 737 simulator arrived sometime after the first aircraft, so we did... a number of our captains went to Seattle, at the Boeing field, did their training, and they had simulators over there. And then they came back and trained other captains and some of the co-pilots, and we had 3 Boeing pilots out here also doing conversions, as we call them.
That must be a fairly expensive business for the company if you don't have a simulator to have to take people up in planes all the time.
Yes. Yes and no, because the aeroplane's there anyway. The overheads are going on, providing it's not depriving you of revenue type of thing. We did our flying at night, and when we first started our night flying with the 737s, the telephone switchboard at Harewood was completely jammed. We had people from Burnham to Rangiora ringing up saying the cows wouldn't lay and the hens wouldn't milk type of thing. And that state of affairs lasted from about 11 o'clock at night through till 6:30, 7 o'clock the following morning. So it only lasted a couple of days, and then people suddenly got used to having New Zealand arriving in the jet age.
You ended up on a 767, didn't you?
Yes.
Now, that's a two-engined international flight. There was a lot of trouble at one stage, I remember, or a lot of worry about a two-engine flight going over such long distances of water. Is that correct?
Yes. Internationally, it goes back to the days of piston-engine aeroplanes, and the reliability of the engines wasn't what it was or is today. And if you didn't have more than two engines, you weren't allowed to fly more than 90 minutes from land. And that's when you ended up with your four-engine aircraft, your DC-6s, Constellations, Stratocruisers, things like that. And two engines they didn't deem sufficient because it was far too far to fly on one engine in the old piston engine days. That thinking carried over into the jet age for quite some time, and it's only in recent years that they've been granted approvals. First of all, it was stretched out to 120 minutes. Then they put a fudge factor onto that. They said you can go 120 minutes plus 10%, and then it moved on out to the final figure today for approved operators. And not anybody can get it. They've got to establish a very good track record of their maintenance and how they monitor the performance of the engines. It's not just put it in and let it go. You've got to monitor the performance of the engine throughout its entire life.
When you say an operator, do you mean a company?
A company.
I mean an airline company or the manufacturers?
No, well, they do it hand in hand, but the ultimate responsibility is to the aircraft operator, the airline itself.
Right.
And in our case with Air New Zealand, perhaps I can relate a small incident. Some time ago, we were climbing out of Auckland on our way to Perth, and we were looking at their engine instrumentation, and I said, I'm not very happy with that engine. It's not 100%. Something's there, and neither of us knew exactly what was going on. I said, I think you better call Maintenance Watch just before we get out of VHF radio range. And I'd no sooner said that, and we got a call from Air Traffic Control, and they said, would you call Maintenance Watch? And so we called Maintenance Watch, and they said, we're looking at that right-hand engine of yours. We're not very happy with that. Would you? And what was going on was we have the facility to download the engine instrument indications down to the maintenance base. We can only do that at the moment on VHF, which means line of sight communications. So if we have we can do it, say, for 100, 150 miles out from New Zealand, and then as soon as we get within 150 miles of Australia, all the information that we've collected in the intervening period will be downloaded to a radio station in Australia and then sent back to our maintenance base in Auckland. And in that fashion, we can keep a very close eye on what the engines are doing and keeping an eye on trends.
That's amazing.
It's the trends that are important rather than a specific incident. We're looking for a whole series of nice, level, straight lines rather than something all suddenly disappearing upwards off the clock. As soon as you see a trend like that, the alarm bells ring.
So does Maintenance Watch see every plane take off? Is there a Maintenance Watch at every airport?
No, it's only at Auckland, but they're monitoring each takeoff, they're monitoring each start. Our peak temperatures are actually on start-up, where we are pouring a lot of fuel into the engine and have a low fuel flow, and that peak temperature you have on start-up is quite critical. And we monitor each individual start temperature, and it might be 525 today, 535 tomorrow, 530 the day after type of thing, and you keep an eye on. But suddenly you see it jump up to 550. You say, why? And they'll start looking around and say, let's keep a close eye on this engine, let's inspect this, let's inspect that, check the fuel flows, check such and such a sensor, because we're monitoring trends.
It must be quite comforting, though, to know that you've got someone else to call.
Very.
Is it?
I'm not the fountain of all knowledge, and it's rather nice to have a referral service, which is something we didn't have until the advent of the 767. And with the 747-400, they've got the same facility to send all this data back and to engineering, and they keep it.
So what's a pilot's routine? All right, so you're going to fly from Auckland to Honolulu. You get up in the morning or whatever, and you go to the airport. What do you have to do?
Right. Get up in the morning. It might be getting up at 11 o'clock at night to report at midnight. One of the, with international flying, your start times, it's a 24-hour day operation, a bit like yourselves here on the radio, because we are governed by curfews. People think nothing of putting a curfew on at Wellington Airport, for argument's sake.
Right.
But there's a curfew in Sydney as well.
Is there?
Yes, they have a curfew. So that means, because of the 2-hour time difference between Sydney and New Zealand, there's a large block of time at which we can't operate. And you've got to make sure you've got the aeroplane going in the right direction, because if somebody puts a curfew on at Vienna or Paris or wherever, it has ramifications right round the other side of the world, because you find the time slot you've got your aeroplane in Paris, by the time it gets to New Zealand, it arrives here during a curfew and has got nowhere to go. So when people start talking about willy-nilly about curfews, it can have tremendous international ramifications for international operations. But to come back to your original question, an hour before flight, report to flight operations, and there you'll review the weather, have a discussion with your flight dispatcher on the fuel reserves you want to carry, look at NOTAMs, notices to airmen, and see what facilities are perhaps unserviceable, whether there's a danger area active because the Navy's out having a military exercise, or it might be the Air Force towing drogues and the Navy are shooting at the drogues type of thing, so you want to keep away from that area. And there's going to be a diversion around it involved, so perhaps a little more fuel. Keep an eye on the fuel at the other end. Make sure that the airfield you're going to has got night lighting available, and it's also got its standby power. Sometimes you might get a NOTAM saying no standby power available, so that if the main power supply falls over, it's all dark when you get there. So you've always, the whole essence of airline flying is keeping a card up your sleeve.
Right.
You go to Honolulu, for argument's sake. There's normally not many weather problems there, but you always have an alternate airfield. You might be going across to Kahului or wherever. We nominate Barbers Point, which is the marine base there. We have technical alternates and weather alternates, and whatever, you always operate on the basis of having a card up your sleeve.
And do you have to decide how much fuel you'll put on the plane, or is that done for you?
Both. They'll have a suggested figure.
Right.
You'll either accept it or modify it. Sometimes, because of your local knowledge of the area and a lot of flying around there, your faith in the forecast. Some of our, particularly if we're finding back in New Zealand now, the standard of our forecasting has dropped considerably.
Oh, really?
Last Monday, within a space of 10 hours, we had it going from a fine day, I think was the forecast on teletext, to 12 hours later it was going to be a bad day. So you got the impression that they couldn't even forecast 12 hours in advance accurately.
And that's not their fault?
No, it's not their fault. I blame it on the politicians. In our cost-cutting measures, we've saved a lot of money with the cost of our meteorological services. Of that, there is no doubt. But in the process, I think we've downgraded the accuracy of our weather forecasts. All our weather comes from the west, because the Earth rotates from east to west, so the prevailing wind is a westerly. And on the west coast of the South Island, we have no weather reporting stations at all.
Is that right?
Manned weather reporting stations, I'll qualify that.
And the demand ones make a difference?
They do indeed, because we have remote controlled weather reporting stations, and they give you temperature, pressure, wind direction, and speed, but they can't give you cloud types, amounts, or the visibility. And we've lost weather reporting from the Brothers. We've lost it from Cape Campbell. We've lost it from Kaikoura, Hokitika, Westport.
Oh, quite a lot.
All these lighthouses, and there's been a lot of interdepartment rivalry as to who was going to pay the postmaster to send out weather reports every hour or every 3 hours. So in consequence, the weather service or the Met Service have got much reduced database on which to make their predictions. Now we can get very pretty pictures that are generated on the computer, but the accuracy of that depends on the weather matching up with the computer programmer's ideas on what it should be. And if they're at variance, we've got another wrong forecast.
I see. So you've got that to deal with before you actually go. And what do you do? Look at the plane after you've been to have a look at your notices and everything.
From there, be out to the aircraft. Usually, occasionally, the captain would do the walk round. It's just a confirmatory thing because the engineers have done that. They've declared the aeroplane serviceable. Right. If you've got a problem on the aeroplane, he would say, out of your 7 toilets, one is not working. Right, no big problem, type of thing. And we'll just put a placard on the door, don't use this toilet. And that might be the sum total of your conversation with the engineer. Right. He would say that on the 767, we've done the trend monitoring of the engines, and he signs on that will fly, has been cleared for another 180-minute EROP flight. EROP's extended range operations. Right. And this is part of this twin engine deal that we're talking about earlier on. Start up and on our way. Problems, you ask about time off and things, say in Honolulu.
Well, when you land there, first of all, you land there, and then what happens?
Right. We land there, 3 pilot crew through to Honolulu. If it's a direct flight, 8 hours actual flight time is our limit for a 2 pilot crew, and if we go over 8 hours, well then it's a 3 pilot crew. So there'll be a captain, 2 co-pilots, or 2 captains and a co-pilot. Arrive at Honolulu, gather up our gear, through customs.
I mean, do you turn it off with an ignition key like you do a car, or what?
No,
what happens?
2 little levers that shut down the fuel computers.
Right.
And they program it to shut the engines down. You'd have the auxiliary power unit running, which is like a small jet engine in the tail, which is supplying electrical power and air conditioning. The customs people would probably meet the aircraft. We wouldn't be involved with that, but the cabin crew and the purser to see if there's any problems on board, any sickness, things like that, before they let everybody off the aeroplane. And then we just sort of follow behind them. We'll be clearing customs. Pardon me. Whoa, out to the crew bus, and then off to a hotel. And I know in my case, we've probably end up having a cup of tea or coffee. We have been known to have the odd beer, right, because you might be going to bed. By this time it might be 9 o'clock in the morning, for argument's sake. You tend to want to wind down a little bit. And you and both the co's might be having, as I say, tea, coffee or a beer. And then pull all the blinds, see if you can keep all the light out, and then go to bed and try and get a bit of sleep.
You could wear one of those first-class masks, couldn't you? Over your eyes.
We do that. We've used earplugs, particularly when they're doing renovations in the hotel we're staying at.
Oh, I see.
So then, depending on flight schedules, if we had a choice, you would only do the flights in which it was a once-a-week service, because that means you'd have a week to stay there. Because you bring the aeroplane in, the other crew who arrived last week would take it out, and we'd be there for a week. That would be a good deal. But if they have 3 flights a day, well, you're going to have a minimum turnaround time. and you'll be off to Los Angeles or back to New Zealand via Tahiti or Rarotonga.
Who decides the minimum time?
By law,
Yeah.
we have this two sets of rules. One is the regulatory one, and the other one is an industrial one. If we operated to the bare regulatory ones, I think life would be a complete and utter misery. Not only that, is I think the regulatory authorities have been very, very slow to catch up with modern aviation in terms of flight time limitations. It's starting to be looked at a lot more closely now in England, and they're doing a lot more research than done in days gone by on eat, sleep, wake rhythms.
Right.
And they're starting to wonder whether or not the regulatory requirements are adequate. In the main, the public have been protected by the various airline pilots associations around the world because of the industrial side of it, which has tended to give them that little extra buffer. And it's not so much as getting a sweet number because the companies are pretty hard-nosed about it too.
Right.
And when it comes to negotiation. So you could say that from that point of view, that's one aspect of safety that's not covered by the regulatory authorities. It's more covered by the individual airline pilots associations around the world.
Did you find mostly for yourself that the rest periods were adequate? Or
Yes.
did you get quite tired?
You do. You can't work on the basis that you do a day's work and you don't feel tired, type of thing. And if you continually fly, even to, as I say, the less or the more relaxed rules of the industrial agreement, vice versa, the tighter rules of the industrial side, even then, if you keep on working to those limits, you don't do anything else. I come back from international flying and they say, neighbours say, oh, you never go to work, type of thing. But the first day you arrive home, you don't do anything, you just blob out, depending on how many time zones, things like that you've crossed. And all you're doing is putting in an attendance and perhaps answering the telephone when people ring up. You certainly don't even feel motivated to go and mow lawns because you've just arrived back off an international flight. Depends. North-south flights are not too bad. 8-hour time difference across Singapore.
I never thought about it being different. So going east to west as opposed to north-south can have different effects on your body.
Well, you cross the time zones only going east to west. You don't cross the time zones north to south. So you can have breakfast at the same time as at Anchorage as you can at Wellington, so to speak. There's I don't know I can't remember offhand what the exact time difference is.
Right.
But Singapore and Perth, for argument's sake, from New Zealand, there's quite a time zone change, whereas we've only got 2 hours, say, to Sydney. And the east coast of Australia, Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne, our service across there, they're out and back. We can do them quite comfortably in one day.
When you did those particular flights, did you find any particular section of that flight as being the bit you didn't like most of all, like either filling in the report at the end or having to land or whatever?
Oh, no, you don't dislike flying. Otherwise, I would have given it up ages ago. It's quite interesting because most people judge a pilot's abilities on how smooth the landing was.
Right.
He might be the world's worst pilot, but he does a terribly nice landing. So everybody thinks he's a hero. And that really is, in terms of pure mechanical skills on handling the aeroplane, that is probably one of the more difficult tasks. But today, the pure handling of an aeroplane, the emphasis on that is not like what it used to be in the or as it was in the older days. You're more of a systems manager now. Satellite navigation is just round the corner. We have 3 different navigation systems on the 767. We can get down to 1 and still arrive there quite comfortably, and it's no big deal. We have 3 different hydraulic systems. We can lose 2. We can lose 1, no problem. 2, we've got some restrictions on what we can do, but you can keep the aeroplane in the air and keep on flying with just a solitary hydraulic system.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. Is there any sort of code that exists between pilots where you don't talk about things that might scare the passengers, might scare people who are going to travel? I mean, could you tell me anything you wanted to about things that had happened to you?
Oh, yes.
That would that might be scary to people who are going to travel in the future? Or do you try not to do that? Do you all keep it to yourselves?
No, because the whole essence of aviation is the sharing of knowledge and information. And it's one of the secrets of our success, I feel. Accidents, incidents, things like that are fairly widely discussed in the aviation community. But we get pretty angry at the media because publishing willy-nilly and perhaps out of context excerpts from flight deck recordings, things like that. The media get hold of it. The legal profession take it out of context, particularly in America, and they'll use it for damages claims, lawsuits, things like that. And that wasn't the object of the exercise. Most people wouldn't be too happy having every conversation recorded in their bedroom, so to speak,
right,
and being reported in newspapers. Well, the flight deck is not a bedroom, but there's a lot of side chat going on. Things can be taken out of context. The fellow had a twinkle in his eye when he spoke, or he was looking pretty serious about it. To somebody reading a transcript in a newspaper, they don't see that.
No.
And
could get the wrong idea.
The whole object of having flight recorders and cockpit voice recorders is to aid accident investigation, so the same damn thing doesn't happen again. And when you end up with the media splashing it around all over the place, and sometimes Radio New Zealand has been guilty of this too, I think, it doesn't serve any useful purpose at all. Quite the contrary.
Uh-huh. Well, and that being the case, can you remember anything that was ever the most frightening thing that happened to you in your career?
Oh,
flying a passenger plane or something that was...
Just before I retired, I won't call it frightening, but it's sure as hell interesting, because on takeoff, we're coming back from Honolulu, and we're on takeoff out of Fiji, and we'd passed our go, no-go decision speed, which we call V1, and we had a bird strike. And everybody on the aeroplane knew something had gone wrong because the whole aeroplane was shaking. The noise changed. It sounded like a sick helicopter, the right-hand engine. So we just had to keep on going till we hit rotation speed, rotate, and the normal standard procedure is to do nothing until 400 feet, and we didn't. And then the co-pilot said, "You're going to shut the engine down?" And I said, "Too blippin' right we are." So we shut that engine down and did a big, wide dumbbell turn, came back and landed. It was the shortest international flight I've ever been on, 9 minutes.
Is that right? Up
Yes.
and down. Does
Yep.
that cause much consternation at the control tower, where they suddenly have to suddenly reroute planes and things to get out of your way?
In that case, no. The only thing that we did do is we asked for the emergency services to be placed on standby. That's standard procedure, because when all said and done, the whole object of the exercise is to make sure the aeroplane can fly on one engine. So it's no earth-shattering event, but as I say, standard procedure, you always have emergency services on standby.
And when you do that, would you tell the passengers that something had gone wrong?
Oh, yes.
You would?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, but they had a pretty fair idea anyway. And as I said some time back, it's always fear of the unknown that gets people all fired up.
Right.
So if they know what's going on, it makes life quite a bit easier.
What's been a highlight in your career?
I've had so many. I think flying a light aeroplane, flew a single-engine Cessna with Tom Middleton. He and I flew a Cessna 210 from New Zealand up to Singapore.
A Cessna?
Yes. And it was the first time and the only time I've been international flying in a light aeroplane. And to me, it's one of the world's best-kept secrets. It was pure magic.
Was it?
we took turns at landing the aeroplane. I'd never flown a Cessna 210 in my life before. I've done 4 landings in it. All of them were at night in places I'd never been to before. So it was a wonderful trip. You have a chat to the policeman on Lord Howe Island, because he's the immigrations officer, he's customs, he's MAF, he's everybody. And he tells you about, I've got a tough job here, because he said, out in the bush, I said, everybody's growing happy backy. And,
Right.
You just have a chat to him, fill up with some more petrol, and we had all the seats out in the back of the aircraft, and a long-range fuel tank, 455 litres, I think was the capacity from memory, which gave us about 12 hours endurance.
Right.
And from Lord Howe, we flew non-stop through to Mount Isa in the Cessna 210. And I stepped off at Singapore, and the owner and Tom Middleton flew back in the Singapore to Christchurch air race and got third. But that was one of the highlights of my flying career.
Did you get? Did you find that sore on your body?
Sore, yes. There's a funny little story there. We were fairly cramped there from time to time, and sitting for hour after hour. Occasionally we'd announce to one another that we would go for a walk. And going for a walk meant you undid your seat belts, you stood up on your seat and did a very slow 360-degree turn, trying to keep your backside out of the control column, and then sit down again, and you'd complete the exercise by saying, "I did enjoy that walk." And we had a few walks between Auckland and Norfolk Island and Lord Howe, and our actual routing was Wellington, Auckland, Norfolk Island, Lord Howe Island, Mount Isa, to Darwin, to Bali, and we overnighted at all these places, and then on to Singapore, which was our destination.
And that was it.
That was it. But that was a real magic flight.
Great. Tell me, in your retirement, will you keep flying?
Oh, yes. Yes. I'm still flying anything I can lay my hands on.
Right. And how long are you able to keep your license as far as age is concerned? Is there any restriction?
No.
No.
There's a well-known fellow in America. He learnt to fly because they told him he was too old to drive locomotives, and I think he finally gave up flying at about 89.
I see. Captain Brian Souter, thank you so much for coming and talking to us this morning. I'm sure lots of people have got enjoyment from that, and maybe it's cleared a few bogies away as well as far as flying is concerned. And all the best with your future flying.
Thanks very much, Lloyd.